Between What I Gave and What Was Missing by Alberto Oliveira, a story of autobiographical romance highlighting misunderstood feelings, silences louder than words, and attempts at love when love always seemed to slip through the fingers. In this intimate and profound account, the author retraces the course of a relationship marked by dedication, frustration, separations, and reunions, woven with emotional pain, personal crises, and an unrelenting quest for recognition and reciprocity. It is a sincere dive into the highs and lows of a heart that only wanted to be seen, heard, and loved, and that even amid absences tried to remain present. Prologue. To love should be simple, a natural give and take, a spontaneous exchange of affection, trust, and companionship. But what happened between us was never that simple. It was a winding road full of unexpected turns, steep climbs, and painful falls. I entered this relationship full of hope, believing that together we could overcome any obstacle. But little by little, what was love began to intertwine with confusion, hurt, and disconnection. Attempts to understand that hit invisible walls, silences heavier than words. This account is my truth. The story of how I got lost while trying to find myself amid who we were and who we stopped being. A journey where pain, hope, and disappointment intertwine, showing that difficult as it may be, courage is needed to face oneself and begin again. Alberto, Chapter 1. The Meeting and the Promise. This is Alberto Oliveira from Digital Art. I always thought life was made of fleeting moments, those that pass quickly, almost without notice. But when I met Enela, I felt that a moment could last forever. She entered my life with a mixture of strength and delicacy, as someone who knows exactly what she wants, yet feels no rush to achieve it. She was different, not the type to be carried away by the hurry of things. She liked to observe, to feel, to understand. I remember one of our first conversations, seated in a cafe, where she said with a shy smile,
"Alberto, I think I can understand your ADHD, but I confess sometimes I suffer a little from the consequences."
I feel that too, but I believe that if we're together, we can make it work, I responded with hope. It was a silent promise that even in the difficulty, there would be room for understanding. And at that moment, without knowing it, we were building something. The early days were full of laughter, sharing, and plans. There was something in that connection that made me feel alive, that gave me the courage to face anything. I wanted to be the man she could trust, the support in tough hours, the friend in lonely times. But amid that light, shadows began to appear. Arguments became frequent. Almost always, from her perspective, I was wrong. When I tried to explain how I felt, she said I wanted too much, more than she could give, that I didn't understand the lack of time and attention she had for me. My feelings were often ignored, as if they were an extra burden, and it was enough to disagree on something, even small, for the argument to start. She used those disagreements as justification for growing apart, saying that too many arguments were destroying what we had. But at the time, I still wanted to believe we could overcome everything. And me? I tried to understand, to love in ways she maybe couldn't receive. I made mistakes, of course, but never from lack of effort. Many times I felt alone in that struggle, that my love was like offering crumbs to someone who needed a feast. Still, there was a promise. The promise that it could be more, better, if only we had the courage to face it together. That promise stayed like a beacon in the storm yet to come.
Chapter 2. The Growing Storm.
Days passed, and the silent promise binding us felt increasingly distant. Enila's presence in my life began to feel like a fragile thread about to snap. The arguments, once sporadic, became the constant soundtrack of our encounters. Nothing was off limits. Anything from a misinterpreted word to an inadvertent gesture could spark conflict, and almost always I was at fault. When I tried to share my feelings, she answered with something that pierced my soul.
Alberto, you are wanting too much. I can't be there for you like you want.
It was hard to accept because, for me, loving meant being present, supporting, caring. But for her, maybe it was different. I felt suffocated by the growing distance between us. She seemed increasingly absent even when she was there. And me, I suffered in silence with a tight chest, trying not to sink into the pain of abandonment. There were moments when I tried to bring it up, ask for more attention, more affection, but she would respond with a tired smile or a cold word. It felt like I was a burden she didn't want to carry. What hurt the most was still loving her, wanting to care for her, wanting to understand what drove her away, even when she couldn't explain it herself. It was a cruel paradox. Moreover, there was her exhaustion, the overload of everyday life, the stress that consumed her. I tried to be understanding, but deep down her absence ate away at me. And so, we drifted apart, argument by argument, silences louder than words, and a love that seemed to slip through our hands. But I still believed that, despite everything, there could be hope. That maybe, if I managed to show more, be more patient, stronger, she might truly come back to me. Little did I know that fate was preparing a greater test, an unexpected blow that would shake all we believed.
Chapter 2.1 The Words That Hurt. Time went by, and arguments increased, becoming constant between Enila and me. I felt I was never in the right from her standpoint, no matter how much I tried to explain my feelings.
You want too much,
she said, almost like a mantra, cutting off my words before they could be heard.
I don't have time nor energy to give you what you need.
I was perplexed, feeling that my feelings were ignored, as if my pain had no importance. I tried to stay patient, but it was hard when my attempts at closeness were met with coldness. Moreover, the arguments weren't just about feelings or lack of attention. Any opinion different from hers became a cause for conflict. I said something simple, and there it was, tension.
You don't understand my point. You don't see that it's not easy for me?
She responded, making it clear that my words were just noise to her. She claimed that all the arguing was why we were growing apart, as if it justified what was happening between us. But to me, that was just a symptom, not the cause. Each fight left me more exhausted, more wounded, more distant. But behind the weariness, there was still hope. Hope that one day there could be reconciliation, that the wounds could heal. It was a constant struggle between the love I felt and the cold reality of our differences.
Chapter 3 The Fragile Restart. After almost a year living together, full of highs and lows, the moment came when Enila decided to return to her own home. It was a shock, an impact that struck deep in my chest, as if everything we had built could collapse in an instant. But surprisingly, not long afterward, we decided to try again. This time, though, we chose to live separately. It was a delicate pact, a middle ground to avoid the constant wear that arguments brought. In this new phase, we stopped wearing the engagement ring, the same that sealed our commitment, the proposal made with so much care.
Maybe this way we'll start to miss each other more, and you'll have the time and space you need.
Maybe you're right, though I still think we could have made it work living together, I said, trying to believe that distance would help heal. Even separated, we tried to keep hope. A fragile hope, because we knew the lack of physical and emotional closeness weighed heavily on our hearts. We talked less, messages dwindled, and the silence between us grew heavier. I missed her, the conversations, the touch, her presence, but I understood that the decision was necessary not to destroy ourselves further. That pause was painful, but necessary so we could both reflect on what we really wanted and needed. Chapter 3.1: The Silence of Pain. Before Anila left our home, there was a very delicate phase. She underwent 2 intestinal surgeries, serious, painful, almost life-threatening. They were weeks of care, fear, vulnerability. I saw the woman I loved weakened with constant pain, limited in everything. Without a second thought, I dove headfirst into being by her side. I did everything I could to care for her, prepared food, helped her move, assisted with chores, offered my shoulder, my embrace, my patience. I did all I could, and maybe more, for her to feel safe, supported, loved. "I'm here with you," I told her on the days she cried exhausted. But what to me was devotion and love didn't seem enough for her. Despite all my efforts, she said she felt alone, that she didn't have the support she needed. Those words struck deep, an injustice to all I tried to be for her. And I suffered too. Suffered from the helplessness of seeing her like that. Suffered from not being able to reach what she expected of me. Suffered from the coldness that settled between us. Intimacy disappeared. Touch was replaced by silence, and even the simplest affection felt forced. Nights became distant, even when we were in the same bed. When she decided to leave home, she said,
I need to take care of my health.
And those words landed like blades. Not because she wanted to care for herself, but because she said it as if I had been an obstacle, as if I hadn't been there the whole time, trying. It was a punch to the stomach. I kept turning it over. So all my effort meant nothing? She said she needed to focus on her health, that she could do it better alone, as if everything I did had been in vain, as if I hadn't been there night and day trying to keep her strong.
Now I need to think only of myself,
she said at the farewell. I stood there, watching the door close, feeling that everything I gave, everything I tried, was invisible to her eyes. That was perhaps the hardest wound to accept. Chapter 4: The Halved Restart. After everything, surprisingly, there was another attempt at rapprochement. Anila was already living in her own home, but said she wanted to try again. However, everything would be different now. Each in their own home, no more ring on our fingers. The same we'd worn for a whole year. Symbol of our commitment.
We can try again, but separately,
she said, in a serious, almost procedural tone. I agreed. I did because there was still feeling, hope, and perhaps some illusion. But what was meant to be a restart felt more like an unfinished draft. We were together, but everything was lukewarm. Tender gestures were rare, meetings spaced out, we slept together sporadically, and the time we spent lacked the lightness of before. The arguments continued, if not aloud, at least in silence, in what went unsaid, in curt messages, in calls left unanswered. Every time I tried to express what I felt, or voice something that hurt, she countered,
You're wanting too much. I already give what I can,
she'd say, leaving no room for dialogue. And so the conversations that should have united us became battles of resistance.
Almost every difference of opinion turned into friction. I wanted connection, she demanded distance. I offered time, she responded with absence. Her justification for drifting apart was always the same, the arguments. But how to avoid them if everything I said seemed to provoke a defensive response? It's impossible to talk to you without it turning into an argument, I even said. Love became emotional survival, and the restart actually became an extension of the end.
Chapter 5. Silence, Coldness, and Indifference. Our attempt to restart, even while living separately, didn't bring the relief I expected. Inila's physical presence was no longer in my house, but actually, the emotional absence had been present for a long time. Before, at least, I could see her at the end of the day, even if we only shared silence. Now, not even that. Conversations became hollow, short messages, dry replies, and that phrase repeated more and more, "You're asking for more than I can give." Every time I tried to vent or explain how I felt, the response was always the same.
"You're always demanding, wanting attention. I have my own life."
And I stayed there, silent, swallowing words that didn't come. Yes, she had her life, but I also had mine, and in it, she was still everything. But I seemed to have been reduced to a nuisance, a melodramatic, an exaggerator. Even her good morning messages became automatic. One day she wrote,
I hope you're, as much as possible, well. My day was full, tiring, and stressful. Despite all the foolish things you wrote, you're in my prayers.
I read that about 10 times. There wasn't even a genuine question about how I was. No real gesture of care, no call, just a cold blessing after calling me a victimizer. At that point, everything I had done for her came to mind. The nights she barely could walk, the 2 surgeries, the medication care, the food, the massages, the affection, the embrace, the patience, the constant support. I did everything I could and more. And even so, she said I didn't support her enough. And now I was the one broken. Fractured shoulder, 4 broken ribs, strong pain to lie down, get up, put on a shirt. And she? Distant, absent, as if nothing had happened. I wrote to her multiple times trying to explain, say how I felt, but in response, I received lines like,
Then take care of the scooter. It couldn't handle your victimism.
That hurt, but it also woke me up. She didn't want to know. Her silence, once hurtful, now became her answer, the clearest of them all. It was then that I realized that maybe the love I carried was draining, not by my choice, but because I was fighting alone for something she no longer held on her side. She let it slip, and I, tired, began to let go too. Chapter 6. The accident, the broken body, and the tired soul. It was as if the universe decided to give physical shape to what I already felt inside. The accident happened quickly, silently, brutally. I was riding my scooter with my son, and at a crossing, the front wheel slipped on something, oil, sand, gravel, and I lost control. I was turning slowly, carefully, but it didn't prevent the fall. I fell on my left side. My son also fell, but suffered only a scraped knee. A lady who witnessed it took us to the permanence clinic. From there, they sent us by ambulance to Inselspital. There they confirmed what my body already screamed: fractured scapula, 4 broken ribs, and burns on my left arm and leg. The doctor prescribed at least 6 weeks of rest. No surgery, just time and patience. That same day, Anila called. Her voice sounded concerned. She regretted not being present because she was in Portugal. On the second day, she called again, with the same tone of care, of someone who cares, but at a distance. On the third day, however, I didn't hear from her, only a message.
I hope you're, as much as possible, well. My day was full, tiring, and stressful. Despite all the foolish things you wrote, you're in my prayers.
I read that about 10 times. There wasn't even a genuine question about how I was. No real gesture of care, no call, just a cold blessing after calling me a victimizer. At that point, everything I had done for her came to mind. The nights she barely could walk, the 2 surgeries, the medication care, the food, the massages, the affection, the embrace, the patience, the constant support. I did everything I could and more. And even so, she said I didn't support her enough. And now I was the one broken. Fractured shoulder, 4 broken ribs, strong pain to lie down, get up, put on a shirt. And she? Distant, absent, as if nothing had happened. I wrote to her multiple times trying to explain, say how I felt, but in response I received lines like,
Then take care of the scooter. It couldn't handle your victimism.
That hurt, but it also woke me up. She didn't want to know. Her silence, once hurtful, now became her answer, the clearest of them all. It was then that I realized that maybe the love I carried was draining, not by my choice, but because I was fighting alone for something she no longer held on her side. She let it slip, and I, tired, began to let go too. Chapter 7. Silences that shout. As my body slowly healed, each passing day made clearer what my soul had known a long time but tried to deny. I was alone. The days after the accident were marked by intense physical pain. Sleeping was a challenge. Getting out of bed felt like torture. Putting on a simple shirt required enormous effort. But what hurt most was the emptiness from the other side. The lack of true words, presence, care. She didn't appear, as I already knew she wouldn't. And she didn't need to. I understood she was physically far. But what pained me deeply was the emotional distance, the subtle indifference, the way she seemed so at ease leaving me there lying in pain without even one more call, one genuine question, how are you today? In the past, when she was ill, I faced her 2 intestinal surgeries that almost cost her life. I cared, supported, cooked, cleaned, helped her get out of bed, dressed. I was there. And even so, she said I didn't do enough, that I didn't understand, that my presence wasn't enough. Those words hurt more than any broken bone. And today, seeing myself in the reverse position, wounded, limited, needing support, and seeing her choose silence, everything gains a cruel clarity. What I once believed was love may have just been my desperate attempt to deserve love. And now, with fractured scapula and ribs, I realize that some things don't heal with rest. There are emotional fractures that linger indefinitely in the soul, especially when the other's silence echoes louder than any scream of pain. Epilogue. What remains after the end. They say time heals everything. Maybe, but some marks don't disappear. They just become easier to carry. What I lived with her was intense, beautiful at times, but also deeply lonely. I do not regret having loved. I only regret having insisted where there was no reciprocity. I gave my best, even perhaps too much. I was patient, present, available, until I lost myself. She said I demanded too much, but in fact, I only wanted the basics: to be seen, heard, loved. Today, I carry the scars of body and soul, but I also carry the certainty that I deserve more. I deserve someone who chooses to stay, not only on easy days, but especially on difficult ones. Someone who doesn't see my care as suffocation, nor my pain as victimism. Closing this story is a way to free myself, to leave behind the attempt to fix what was never whole. and to open space for a new chapter. One with more truth, more peace, and above all, more self-love. Because in the end, the love that saves is the one that begins within ourselves. The end.